Hey heroes, welcome back. Matt and Nez here, and we are back with our episode 2, Sir Matt, of the kind of book to show comparison, if you will, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Forgive me if my quality isn't as good and pristine as it normally is. Ez was on vacation all last year. I'm on vacation this week. So I do not have access to all of my good equipment.
Yeah,
So I hope my audio is coming through at least somewhat decently.
sounds good.
But yeah, so what we're gonna do today is I did episode one, did a breakdown of books versus the show. So we're gonna do that again here. There's a ton of changes that they did, and we're gonna still be going episode by episode through these, but just kind of bigger takeaways now that Az and I are doing these going forward. So I mean, as right out of the gate, by far one of the biggest changes, and I would say the best change, not just this episode, but the season in general, is the White Cloaks, right?
Yeah.
The White Cloaks come in, we see Valda, he has an Aes Sedai being chained up at the stake, he's cut her hands off, burning at the stake. So the White Cloaks, hands down, are the best change, if I had to pick one, of not just this episode, but the whole season, because they make them way more menacing and way more frightening, and they do
Yep.
a great job of building them up as a villain.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. This is one of those changes. Definitely not in the book. We don't see them killing Aes Sedai. The confrontation we have is in Barillon, in a city, and all of the confrontation here is like out in the forest. We don't know where it's at exactly. They're kind of just leaving Emmons Field. So yeah, this was a big change, and I liked it. You and I, when we initially saw it, were like, well, I mean, it literally stopped us in our tracks. It was awesome. It's crazy to say that it was awesome to watch the White Cloaks do this, but as you said, way more villainous. So that was great. And to roll into kind of the next big moment in this episode was again on the run. It's when they are headed towards the ferry, right? So we have them showing up to cross the ferry. After they cross the ferry, so that goes down. I mean, again, we do have the Trollocs, right? They're rushing us there. And she's able to get across. I don't believe I can't remember whether she sunk the ferry or not like that, or whether or not that happened. But I do know that after that they go to the city Barillon, and it just doesn't happen the same way. We skip right that other location, but it was cool to see them kind of cross and to see them being kind of tracked by Trollocs and on the run. It was quite scary.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, even though this is a change, like it's still kind of structured the same because we're getting out of Two Rivers into essentially where this episode ends with the Shadar Logoth. So like this change, it didn't feel like big, oh man, like drastic change that I did or didn't like. I do think why they did it makes a lot of sense. And then one big change, which I kind of talked about last week or last one of these episodes I did, but we'll definitely be talking in the next one, is obviously Tom Maryland is not with them while he is with them traveling in he's part of that group.
Right. And actually, that's important to bring up here too. So it's just after the Taran River when they cross that they enter the city Barillon, and that is where they will pick up with Nynaeve. Right. So we know that in this episode, one of the bigger changes, and we'll get to it at the very end, another one of those travelers who's not who appears right. So structurally, kind of the same, like does show back up here, but just in a different way at a different time, and cool. I like it. It still kind of built suspense, and there was really no need to go to Barillon. It was fine to move that around. I felt like.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, 100%. And one other thing I guess we should talk about with this group traveling is that Moraine, excuse me, is injured, which is not the case.
Yes.
And she's like
Yes.
severely injured, which will go into the next little segments. We do actually see this. So we get a couple flashes of them sort of like on the road, I guess, and they stop for the night. This is where we get Moraine showing Egwene the power, which does happen, and it
Yeah.
actually happens pretty
Yeah.
much
About
like the
this.
same way.
Yeah.
It goes down pretty much the same way.
Right, which I thought was good. I think people were happy to kinda see that, that she used her gemstone and all those things were good. I was gonna make a joke there though, that although they are traveling together, I just put up I'm looking at the clip here, Egwene and Rand are sleeping awfully close together in that campsite. I don't know if that was the same in the books, but it's
Definitely. Yeah, they're definitely a lot closer
a
than
lot
they're,
closer.
and we talked about this in the last comparison video. Same thing is that their relationship is way closer than it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, which is great, which is cool. So, now I think next up would really be the kinda dream sequence. So along the way, they have this all of them, Matt, Perrin, and Egwene, Rand pulls a bat out of his mouth in this episode, and he actually sees, the Dark One, balls him on there. He didn't say anything about that. Perrin is the one who says something, but they first had that dream in, I believe, the city Barrelon is where they first it kinda happens, and they get attacked there by Fade. So that's in the book. In this, it was just all out around the campfire. They kinda condensed it all right there, and they wake up, and Rand sees just this burnt out, cut out sort of region where all these bats and like Rand or Matt had seen something slightly different. The bats' necks were snapped, and we didn't see all of that, but you could tell each of them had a variation of the dream, and Moraine was really shook by that.
Right, right. We also get. I'm trying to remember just exactly where it takes place, but we get the Manetherin song, which is cool.
Yeah, which is great. So yeah, let's just jump to that because that comes up. I believe we have a White Cloak meeting, and then after that, I think is the Manetherin song. So we meet those White Cloaks again, and really, it was no more than. Although there is one good difference there, right? Is that Jeff from Bornhold is there, almost advising kind of an ice. Well, he doesn't know that Moraine is an Aes Sedai. The
Right,
way they come up and sort of search her, but he sees the wound and says, "I would seek one of them out." That's not, we got a more. We knew that he was less of a zealot. We knew that in the books he wasn't as crazy, if you will, when it comes to White Cloaks, but still to see that was really showed us the difference between him and Emin Valda. So there's that. And then, as you said, yeah, they do the Manetherin song as they're walking, as they're marching along, and they're pushing forward. And it's actually the Emmons Fielders that kind of start singing it, right? Whereas in the book, it's a speech
right.
given by Moraine to wake the old blood, right?
Yeah,
So
it's super cool, and I'm glad that they did to get that in there because one of the things I think that we thought would be a little bit cooler, but I think will be much more explained in season two is the world building, and so we kind of got that world building there a little bit, and then we didn't get as much later as I thought we would. That would kind of explain like just who the Dark One really is and the Forsaken and all of that stuff. So to kind of get the importance of Manetheren and hey, there's old blood that runs through the two rivers. Well, right at the gate was very, very important, especially to set up the idea that one of these people could be the dragon going forward.
yeah, and that's a great point. One thing too, kind of in the midst of all that we just discussed, right in the middle of the episode, is something that you like to talk a lot about, Matt, which is Rand, sort of voicing his concern with Moraine and saying, "Hey, I don't think what like, yes, I know we're going to the White Tower, then we're going here, but what happens there? What is there for a man at the White Tower? There's a place for Egwene, but what about us?" And although the spirit of that is in the book, it just happens a little bit different, and it's a bit more abrupt, I think, and pushed forward. And you also had the element of Tom Maryland kind of talking to the boys about some of that stuff, whereas this was just outright kind of him confronting Moraine. And again, that was in the between the middle of the dream sequence and then the White Cloaks. So, but yeah, still a cool moment.
Yeah, so then we make our way to Shadar Logoth, and this is where I would say I feel like I actually thought Shadar Logoth, the way they did it in the show, was good, and
Mhm.
I thought it worked. I would say, again, with Moraine being injured, that definitely caused some book changes. Tom not being there, that caused some book changes. Matt's still going to get the dagger. It
Mhm.
goes down a different way. I mean, what do you think? Do
Yeah.
you think they could have included Ordeath or no?
Oh, yeah, I think they could have. I think I don't know, it's just an extra layer of mystery. It's something they could have even done with you didn't really have to hire an actor. You could have put a guy in, I don't know, I don't know, it wouldn't have been a major role or anything because he kind of there's CGI effects with it. You could have him grow up on the wall or be a shadow figure. You could have done something to allude to that. Even just taking Pot on Fane and really having him be the guy that you silhouette, maybe show his silhouette and him being creepy or, because really, when the boys find that treasure and that dagger, they're enticed. There's a conversation, there's a dialogue back and forth where they are almost, he's trying to get the he's a treasure hunter and he's trying to get the treasure out of the city, which is the whole point. He's bound to this city. He's trying to get a piece of his treasure out, which is a part of him. So the dagger, when Matt takes that dagger, it's really he's taking a piece of Mordith with him, and that's not a good thing. So that was a bit maybe confusing. I think for non-book readers, they simply saw a dark city with a dark presence on it. Maybe didn't quite know. They did do a good job of talking about the Trollocs being not wanting to enter that city because of a different type of darkness, which was cool. But I think even if Moraine could have been just a bit more awake and have said a few more words about it, it would have given some weight. But then their whole point was they were trying to say, like, she chooses to go there, right? She and Lan talk about that. So this was all on Lan, and later on it will be a failure for him. But really, there was no other way to go. And so Moraine actually takes them into the city, but she's very, very, very strict about don't touch anything, don't do this, don't do that. She had her rules, was going to keep an eye on them, but needed sleep. And then, so it's just different. It's done a little differently. I like it. It still works. I do wish that I felt bad that like they make it all that it's Lan's fault, like Lan really let her down in a sense, but like her failures are his failures and vice versa, so yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was okay the way they sort of just had it be on Lan, especially because Nynaeve is sick, right? Or excuse me, Moraine
Yep.
is sick. Back to what you said about the dagger. I think I almost would have, and I know again this isn't necessarily what we think they should have done, but just sort of just changes that do exist between the book and the show.
Yeah.
But I think I almost would have just had Padan Fain give Matt the dagger in Shadar Logoth.
Yeah. Maybe he's already been tainted or he's started his merging process or whatever there, and he went ahead and snuck in.
Just
I mean,
speed
yeah.
it along, and then
Yeah.
it would add weight to him showing up at the end.
Right. I think there was some whistling or there was an indication that he was in the city, and maybe they did shoot a scene like that or something, but it wouldn't have hurt at all. But I think they were really trying to keep him as we've said, one of the things we thought was an issue was that there wasn't enough Padan Fain and that we didn't get more direct, like when the characters encounter him in the book, it's very much like, oh, there he is. They can see him and they're like, what's the peddler doing here? He's gone crazy. He's gone mad. And actually, when he talks to them, he still somewhat makes sense. And he is like, don't tell anybody that you saw me, not even Moraine, they'll kill me. But it's more about him being not a dark friend, but that the Trollocs are off after him too, or something, he makes it out to be this weird thing. So yeah, I wish that was a little bit different, but it does still work and it's okay.
I think the way I would have done it is I would have had Padan Fain there. I would have had him act like he, because they just saw him essentially get out of Two Rivers too when it was being attacked and everything. And I would immediately have him cause some doubt with Matt and just the Aes Sedai, like you shouldn't trust those Aes Sedai, like, hey, or take this, I found it, or something. And then that way it would have built Padan Fain up a little bit more. And then when he shows up at the end, see episode 8, it's like, oh wow, I thought that guy was a good guy, maybe. Like I thought he was actually friendly towards Matt, and he advised them against the Aes Sedai. And then when we see him at episode 8, it's like, and he stabs Loyal and everything, then it's, oh, okay, actually, no, that's why he told him not to trust the Aes Sedai, is because he's a dark friend.
Right. So the only time with Padan Fain, you had this issue in episode 1 where you see him smiling during the Trolloc attack and then spin and go away. You could have just, instead of had him smile and just do something more like scratch his beard and then just roll away. Nothing too up, because the smiling flat out, you're like, what is this guy? He's a dark friend. And then you could have like delayed some of that. And like you said, done a dagger exchange here. And we're sort of like, okay, who is that guy? He's not good. He's not bad. He's just sort of a kind of a scoundrel like character. And we're not really sure what he's about until later on. So yeah, I'm with you there. When Matt gets that dagger in this, it becomes kind of like in the same way that happens in the book, it's almost like a trigger for Mashadar. And there's this black kind of oozing fog, whatever presence that is sneaking around the city. And if it touches you, you're dead. I think one of the horses was lost to prove that point, maybe in this. So the way they get split up, I think the pairings are still the same, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, the pairings are still 100% the same. I liked the chase out of the city. I thought it was kind of cool. I almost thought because in episode 3 we see Rand break down the door with the power.
Yeah.
I almost thought that maybe they missed an opportunity there in my rewatch of having Rand knock maybe that door open, and it seems like, oh,
Yeah, a little extra.
and then you could have just maybe, okay, there's something going on. Because you're talking about, I don't know which one of you is the dragon, because I think Rand, I know it felt like they were trying to hide it the whole
Dang.
season,
Yeah.
but he's like using, he picks up a club, or I can't remember exactly. He picks up something to sort of end up knocking it open. So because Matt's trying to get in.
That's a good point. It's like 52 minutes. He does, like, he's struggling to get out of Shadar Logoth, and like, you almost feel like the threat's more real with Mashadar behind him, creeping up on him. Like, that would have been the moment where he would have used the power versus with the Dark Friend. I don't know.
I think I would have done both, just to sort of give him a little more foreshadowing for it. The
Yeah.
only other big change I felt like in this episode, and again, it's just a showism only because it obviously doesn't take place in the books, was the conversation between Matt and Perrin.
Yeah.
And I actually thought it was good because I actually like the addition of Perrin having a wife, which definitely does not happen in the books, just to sort of, I think, speed along ultimately his like way of belief, viewpoints and stances. And so I actually thought it was kind of cool when Matt was talking to him, like, hey, Layla gave me this dagger
Right.
that he has, and he gives it to Perrin. And that was a change I like, but obviously that does not happen in the books.
Right. She always said that she made tools, not weapons. She never made weapons. She made tools. And so there's also that whole bit where he struggles with, Perrin will struggle with the idea of picking up either a weapon or a tool and going back and forth. But yeah, as you said, struggling with the way of the leaf and all these different things and violence and the chaos that it brings. And then he's, that literally brought the end of, his wife's life. Like, he was a part of it. And it's such a crazy thing. And right there too, this whole bit, I mean, no one else really knows what he is going through, and not until we get later on that the white tent, or the white cloak tent, where he kind of talks to Egwene. But dang, that was a good part to kind of hand the dagger and to have those two talk a bit more, because that doesn't happen enough, I feel like. And I was glad they did that for sure.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, that is our sort of episode 2 versus the books. I think episode 2 had, in all honesty, of all the episodes, it might be one of the closest ones to
Yeah,
the books, really.
I think you're
because
right.
because so much of it is just sort of that Shadar Logoth scene. I mean,
Yeah,
now going forward, everything is like totally different.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, a lot of structural points are there and a lot of elements and things. But I think of all of them, this one is really kind of the most straightforward because things still kind of happen, but it's like Tom, really, like the only difference, other than the White Cloak stuff, which was awesome addition,
Yeah.
it's basically like Tom isn't there for those events, which is
Right.
really kind of like the only difference. I also think episode 2 for me is probably, when you're comparing the books to the show, the one that I felt like the most okay about, because
Hmm.
it's pretty similar
Yeah.
to
I mean,
how it goes. I mean, it's like we don't start seeing crazy stuff that like we wanted to see, like we'll get with episode 4 and Logain. Well, obviously when we get to that episode, we'll cover all of that. And then like, stuff we didn't want to see. This one was really, like, as far as book to show, like pretty good across the line.
yeah, for me, just in 30 seconds here, it's simply, you skipped over Barillon, right? And you continued traveling. You gave the dreams there. You mixed around the White Cloak confrontation. You kind of, you didn't have Moraine do her whole like power presence where she like grows 20 feet tall and scares them in Barillon. So that whole thing is shifted around, and the power is sort of given more to the White Cloaks. They're more ominous, which we said was great. And then at the very end, we have Nynaeve show up, right, with her knife or her dagger sneaking up on land, which some folks didn't like. But the fact that she is able to track them in the books, and she does show up in Barillon, she does
Right.
track them and find them. So that's pretty impressive for a wisdom. So I thought
Yeah.
overall, you're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. The way it appears when we first watch episode 2 is great. Later, I don't like the way that they don't explain how she tracked people, but they kind of, it's
Right.
like, so looking back, I like that scene just a little bit less, but comparing it just to where we should be at the book versus the show and watching it for the first time, I thought it was good because that's what happens.
Yeah, it doesn't even we don't know whether it's gonna matter at all, like, her ability to track, like, in the book, it's totally different the way that she does, and so or they just have, omitted that in the show, and they're just leaving us, out. I mean, we have no freaking clue what a tell is or how it is that she did it, but the fact that she does track, them down is the same as is in the book. It's just the how is definitely not explained, so, but yeah, hey, friends, thanks so much. This is fun. I actually like this is my first one. Matt did the first one on his own, and I like this. This is fun to go through and just kind of talk about these differences and look at them because it's a way to kind of go back and really almost do a rewatch for us and then discuss the differences. So we appreciate it. Friends, please like, please subscribe. Leave us a comment down below. Let's know which changes you thought were good, which changes you thought were bad. And as always, friends, remember that the grave is no bar to our call.